I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions. I spend most of my days trying to avoid worst-case scenarios. Comes with the job. I work in cybersecurity. I spend hours tracking subtle changes in systems, invisible shifts in behavior, all in the name of catching breaches before they get catastrophic. That's my world. Quiet threats, hidden signs. But that morning in November, it wasn't work that woke me up early. It was something else. Anxiety isn't something I feel often, not the irrational kind. But that day, I felt it in my chest the moment my eyes opened, like a weight, like someone had placed a cold stone in the center of my ribs while I was sleeping. The room was still dark. I could hear the distant hum of the heat kicking on, the house doing its best to keep warm against the Portland chill. I turned over and reached for Mallory, but the bed was empty. Her side was already cold. She was always up before me on weekdays, so I didn't think much of it. But something just felt different. The house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way, like it was holding its breath. I got up, tossed on a hoodie, and padded down the hallway barefoot. The scent of fresh coffee hit me as I turned the corner into the kitchen. Strong, dark, just the way she liked it. I followed the smell to where Mallory stood, leaning against the counter in her robe, a gray one with loose sleeves and a worn hem. She looked up from her tablet as I came in, gave me a quick smile. "Morning," she said, voice soft, like she didn't want to wake something. "Hey," I replied, rubbing my eyes. "Smells good." She slid a mug across the counter toward me, just the way I liked it, cream, no sugar. I took a sip. She turned her attention back to her screen. The light from the tablet lit up her face, made her eyes look glassy, unreadable. I leaned over to grab the creamer from the fridge, and that's when it happened. Her screen lit up again. A notification slid in from the top. I caught it in my peripheral vision, just a flash, but it was enough. "Garrett. Last night was perfect, Redheart." I froze. Not visibly, just enough for my pulse to thud in my ears. I didn't say anything. I didn't even look directly at it. I just reached over and, almost instinctively, flipped the screen face down on the counter. Stupid. I don't even know why I did that. Reflex, maybe, like I was trying to protect her. Or maybe protect myself from having to ask what I already didn't want to know. She noticed right away. "What was that?" she asked. Light tone, almost casual, but her voice had tightened. "Nothing," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "Just bumped the tablet." She raised her eyebrows. "You flipped it." I gave a shrug and sipped my coffee, looking everywhere but at her. My brain was moving in 10 directions at once, but I said nothing. Mallory stepped closer, picking up the tablet slowly. "You saw the message." It wasn't a question. Her voice had gone flat. She swiped the screen on and stared at it for a beat too long before turning the screen away from me. "It's not what you think," she said, shaking her head. "Garrett's just a friend. It's an inside joke from work. He sends stuff like that to everyone. That's how he is." I just nodded, trying to appear cool about it, but inside, my mind was already spinning. Garrett. Yeah, I'd heard her mention him before. He was on her team, some kind of project manager. I'd met him once at a holiday party a year ago. Short, intense, confident in a way that rubbed me the wrong way, like he laughed too loud and looked too long. Mallory crossed her arms. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Getting suspicious over nothing." I looked at her then. Really looked. Her posture was defensive, lips pressed in a line. But her eyes, they weren't mad. They were worried. "I didn't say anything," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You didn't have to," she replied quickly. "I know that look. I just saw a heart emoji from a guy who said, 'Last night was perfect.' I think I'm allowed to wonder." "It's harmless," she said, brushing it off. "We were talking about the pitch we gave yesterday. That's all." I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted to chalk it up to poor wording or Garrett being too casual. But there was something in the way she said it. Too fast. Too practiced. Like she'd rehearsed it in her head. She saw the doubt in my face and went in for the K*L. "If you weren't so paranoid all the time, maybe our marriage would be calmer." That one landed hard. And she knew it. Her words hit that raw nerve. The one that said, maybe it's your fault things feel distant lately. Maybe you're just insecure. I felt the guilt settle in, heavy and familiar. I took a breath and nodded, pretending like I believed her, like I'd overreacted, like I was the problem. I'm sorry, I said, because that's what I always did when she got that tone. I didn't mean to upset you. She let out a sigh like she was releasing tension, gave a small smile and reached for her mug. And just like that, the moment passed. But it didn't really, because beneath the coffee and casual words, something had changed. The air between us had shifted. There was a chill now, something unspoken that neither of us addressed but both of us felt. She grabbed her bag and said she had to leave early. Another emergency meeting. I kissed her cheek, and she kissed me back, but there was a pause in it just long enough to notice. After she left, I stood in the kitchen, still holding my half-finished mug. The sunlight had started to creep through the window, lighting up dust in the air. I stared at the spot where her tablet had been, where that message had popped up. Last night was perfect. I tried to let it go. I really did. I went through my morning routine, showered, dressed, logged into work, answered emails, joined meetings. But every time I closed my eyes for even a second, that message floated back into my mind like a warning light. Garrett. Heart emoji. Last night. And worse than the message was her reaction. Not the words, but the rhythm of them. The way she skipped over explanations and went straight for my throat with that line about suspicion. It wasn't defensive, it was tactical. She redirected the whole thing before I could even get my bearings. I know deflection when I see it. I see it every day in security logs, in emails that don't match previous patterns. When someone's trying to hide something, they're always a little too quick to explain. A little too eager to make you the problem. I didn't confront her again that day. Didn't bring it up that night. We ate dinner like nothing happened. She talked about a new client. I nodded along, played my part. But something had big asterisk N. A crack, barely visible at first. But once it's there, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You keep looking back at that spot, waiting for it to spread. And something told me this wasn't going to stay small for long. After that morning, nothing was the same. Maybe on the surface, sure. Mallory still kissed me goodbye, still left her coffee cup in the sink, still texted me reminders about the dry cleaning or that we were low on oat milk. But underneath all of that, the rhythm of things started to shift in these small, subtle ways. The kind of shifts you only notice if you're looking closely. And after that message from Garrett, I was looking very closely. It started with her schedule. Mallory always left for work around 8:30. She was consistent, almost ritualistic. But within a week of that message, she started heading out earlier. Some mornings she was gone before I even got out of bed. Said she had early strategy calls, or that her boss had looped her into a new project. It didn't raise alarms at first. Her job in marketing was unpredictable. But then the evenings changed too. She started coming home later, sometimes 7:30, 8, 8:15. Always with a fresh excuse. The campaign is behind. Brittany needed help with the deck. There was a last-minute client call. It added up on paper. But in my gut, it didn't. One night, I tried to be casual and said, "Long day, huh?" She didn't look up from her phone. Yeah, it's been nonstop. I watched her scroll. Her nails tapped against the screen, new color. Coral pink. I hadn't seen that shade on her before. I almost asked if she went to a new salon but decided against it. I was already keeping track of too many details. That's the thing about suspicion. It turns you into someone else. I didn't want to be that guy. The guy who checks phone logs. Who stares too long when she walks into the room. Who memorizes what time she leaves and returns. But I was becoming him. Quietly, carefully. I didn't even realize it until I caught myself writing notes. Literally scribbling down her comings and goings in a notepad I kept in my desk drawer. Thursday. She left at 6:50 a.m. Returned 8:12 p.m. Said meeting with Garrett's team ran over. There it was again, Garrett. His name started showing up more and more in her stories. Garrett thinks the client's going to pull funding, she'd say. Or, Garrett came up with a new idea for the ad spot. At first, I chalked it up to proximity. They worked together. It made sense. But soon it felt like every anecdote started with Garrett said or Garrett did. One night she mentioned him twice at dinner, then caught herself and changed the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. I smiled and nodded and tried to act like I hadn't noticed. But I had. Then came the wardrobe change. Mallory's style was pretty laid back. Jeans, sweaters, sometimes a blazer if she had client meetings. Comfortable. But suddenly, there were new dresses. Form-fitting, flowy, stylish. Shoes I hadn't seen before. Perfume. Something expensive, spicy, unfamiliar. And the thing that got to me most? She didn't tell me about any of it. No shopping bags, no tags left in the trash. It all just appeared. "You look nice," I said one Friday morning as she walked past me in a dark green dress I'd definitely never seen. She paused, hand on the doorknob, surprised. "Thanks. It's just for work." I nodded. "Big meeting?" "No, just." I felt like dressing up. That answer stuck with me. I felt like dressing up. Not I had to. Not we're presenting today. Just felt like it. But not for me. And then, like clockwork, the tech got locked down. Mallory used to leave her phone on the nightstand. Now it followed her everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, even into the backyard when she watered the herbs. She added a new passcode, one I couldn't guess. She logged out of the shared laptop, too. Suddenly, everything was work stuff she couldn't let me see. I asked once if she changed her password on purpose. She smiled tightly and said, "Security policies. It's a company-wide thing." Sure it was. On the weekends, things only got weirder. She started going to the gym every Saturday morning. Thing is, Mallory hated the gym. She'd always preferred yoga at home, jogging in Forest Park. But now she was spending 2 hours at the studio, coming back with perfect hair, makeup intact, and not even a drop of sweat on her shirt. I checked the back seat of her car once, no gym bag, no towel, not even a water bottle. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. I needed something concrete. And I guess deep down, I still wanted to be wrong. Then came the reception. It was a corporate networking event at a downtown hotel. Cocktails, speeches, a little glad-handing with the firm's partners and clients. I'd been asked to give a brief presentation on cybersecurity risks in marketing data. Nothing major. Just 15 minutes, a Q&A, done. Mallory was invited too, since it was her department hosting. I saw it as a chance to reconnect, to be seen together, maybe even to feel like a team again. I wore a suit. She wore black silk and heels I hadn't seen since our anniversary dinner last year. "You look amazing," I told her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You clean up well too." I did the presentation. It went fine. Better than fine, honestly. I felt confident. People were engaged. Afterward, I chatted with a few executives while Mallory drifted off to the bar with some of her coworkers. That's when it happened. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just happened to be walking past when I heard her voice, quiet but clear. She was talking to a colleague, Brittany, I think. "He's terrible at presentations," Mallory said, laughing under her breath. I stopped. Brittany frowned. "Really? I thought he was great. Didn't he just present to the board yesterday?" Mallory didn't answer right away. I turned just enough to catch her expression. She looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. Pale, frozen. Brittany kept talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. That exact moment, I felt something in me collapse. Not loud, not violent, just the quiet, cold crumbling of something that had been standing a long time. I left early that night. Didn't tell her. Just said I was tired. She didn't come home for another hour. Said she went to grab dessert with the team. No box. No receipt. No mention of where. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. My mind turning everything over. The messages. The new clothes. The perfume. The locked phone. The lies because they were lies now. And her comment at the reception? That wasn't just a stray jab. That was contempt. I wanted to believe this was fixable. That we were just in a slump. But the truth was becoming clearer by the day. Mallory was slipping away from me, and she wasn't trying to stop it. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. That's the part that keeps looping in my head. The thing that turned coincidence into revelation. If it weren't for the snowstorm, I would have been in Seattle, asleep in a hotel bed, thinking my life was mostly fine. Instead, I was there to see what my life really was. It started that Friday morning. I was scheduled to fly out for a client meeting, a big contract pitch. Mallory kissed me goodbye at the door, wearing that same vanilla perfume that had become her armor lately. She smiled, told me to text when I landed. "Love you," she said, and maybe she meant it in some half-habitual way. I said it back because I didn't know what else to say anymore. But then, 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with the airline alert. All flights canceled due to severe weather conditions. The city was blanketed in early snow, thick, unrelenting, the kind that made time slow down. I sat in my car at the airport parking lot, watching the flakes streak the windshield. I could have called her, told her I wasn't going. But something inside me stopped. A quiet instinct whispered, "Don't. Not yet." So I rented a car. A bland gray SUV with squeaky wipers and a faint smell of pine cleaner. I started driving home, the highway nearly empty. Portland was still buried under that soft, eerie stillness that comes when snow erases sound. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I didn't have a plan. Just a thought, circling like a hawk. See what happens when she thinks you're gone. When I turned onto our street, IK asterisk led the headlights a block early. The house was dark except for a faint glow in the living room window. Curtains half drawn. I parked at the corner, engine off, heart pounding in that steady, detached way it does when you're too deep into something to feel fear. I sat there for a while, watching the snow fall in the yellow haze of the streetlight. My breath fogged the glass. A part of me wanted to drive away, to protect myself from whatever truth was waiting inside. But I'd spent months watching, guessing, doubting. I needed to know. The front door was unlocked. That's the first thing I noticed when I stepped inside. Not wide open, not careless, just unlocked. The air was warm, heavy with candle wax and something else. A smell I couldn't place. Wine maybe. Vanilla. Skin. There were candles burning in the living room, 3 of them arranged on the coffee table. 2 half-full glasses of red wine sat beside them. A soft playlist drifted from the Bluetooth speaker, the kind of slow, lazy music Mallory liked when she wanted the world to fade out. I stood there, barely breathing, scanning the room. Her blouse, pale silk, was draped over the armrest of the couch. On the rug, near it, lay a man's shirt. Not mine. Too large, different brand. Faint cologne that wasn't familiar. My chest went hollow. I moved slowly, every step deliberate. Up the stairs, each creak of the wood felt like it could give me away. The closer I got to our bedroom, the clearer the sounds became. Muffled laughter. A low murmur of voices. A whisper followed by a breath that wasn't hers alone. The door was slightly open. A crack of warm light cut through the dark hallway. I didn't want to look, but I did. Mallory was sitting on the bed, her back to me. Her hair was loose, messy in that way I hadn't seen in months, except now it wasn't for me. She was wearing one of her new blouses, unbuttoned, and Garrett was behind her. His hand rested at her waist, his head bent close, his voice low. She laughed, soft, breathy, familiar in all the ways that hurt the most. Then he kissed her neck. That was it. The quiet, clean confirmation. The world didn't explode. It folded inward. 100 images flashed through me. The message, the perfume, the early mornings, the way she'd looked away at the reception. Every little thing that hadn't added up now aligned perfectly into something unbearable. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I didn't demand explanations or throw things. I just stood there for a few seconds longer, memorizing the scene. Not because I wanted to, but because some part of me needed the proof burned in deep enough that I'd never doubt it later. Then I turned around and walked out. I don't even remember driving. The world outside was a blur of white and shadow, the snow falling harder now, covering everything in silence. I pulled over once near the lake. Our lake, the one where we used to take walks in the spring, and just sat there. My hands were shaking, though I wasn't cold. I thought I'd cry or scream or feel something sharp, but there was just emptiness. Like the part of me that could feel had shut down for maintenance. I don't know how long I sat there before I started the car again. Eventually, I drove to a cheap roadside motel near the interstate. The kind of place where the walls are too thin and the heater sounds like it's chewing gravel. I checked in under my own name because hiding didn't matter anymore. That night, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the radiator click and hiss. I thought about how strange it was that something so devastating could feel so quiet. No arguments, no confessions, just the simple, irreversible fact of it. She's gone. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how long I'd been living beside it. All those nights I'd convinced myself she was tired. All those times she said, "You're imagining things." I wasn't. I'd just been refusing to see. I woke up at dawn, still in my clothes. The world outside was pale and colorless, the snow melting into slush. My phone buzzed with a message from Mallory. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Whatever she said, whatever excuse she'd crafted, it wouldn't change the truth. I deleted it, packed my things, and left before the sun was fully up. As I pulled back onto the highway, the city shrinking in my rearview mirror, a strange calm settled over me. I thought about how I'd spent months waiting for proof, like proof would somehow give me power. But it didn't. Proof doesn't fix anything. It just clears the fog so you can see the wreckage you're standing in. Somewhere past the state line, I realized I wasn't going back. Not for an explanation. Not for closure. There was nothing left to repair. Mallory could keep her stories, her perfume, her secret world of locked screens and early mornings. I didn't need to know why anymore. I'd already seen everything I needed to see. And maybe that was the strangest part of all. After months of suspicion and restless nights, after all the guessing and guilt and denial, the truth wasn't a relief. It was a quiet, devastating kind of peace. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to protect. I didn't go home after that night. Didn't go back to pack a bag. Didn't call to say I wasn't coming. I just left. No one tells you how easy it is to disappear when you're ready to stop being visible. When your heart's cracked and all the noise in your life suddenly feels meaningless, silence becomes a kind of sanctuary. I drove south until the city lights were gone, past small towns and shuttered gas stations, until Oregon blurred into northern Nevada. At some point, I pulled over at a rest stop just to breathe. I watched the sunrise through a bug-smeared windshield, the sky bruised pink and gray, and felt nothing. Not peace, not pain, just empty space where feelings used to be. By the second day, I found it. A small trailer for rent outside a forgotten lakeside town near the base of the Toyabe Mountains. It sat on a patch of uneven ground at the end of a gravel path that didn't show up on GPS. No neighbors, no noise, just a frozen lake surrounded by pine trees and the echo of wind. I paid cash, signed nothing. The man who rented it to me didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer any. The place was rough, with paneling warped from time, a leaking faucet, and a heater that wheezed like it might give out at any moment. But it was mine, or at least it was away. I unpacked the clothes I had, bought some canned food, an old coffee pot, and a second-hand laptop from a pawn shop in town. No one knew where I was, not even my brother, not my closest friends. I didn't want them to know. I needed this solitude like oxygen. The first week was the hardest. Every day, I'd wake just before sunrise. There was no alarm, just the sharp cold and my own restless mind. I'd wrap myself in a blanket, sit at the tiny dinette by the window, and drink instant coffee from a tin mug while the sky turned from black to pale blue. Then I'd open the laptop, half hoping it wouldn't turn on, so I'd have an excuse to avoid the world. But it did. So I worked. Remote consulting wasn't new to me. I'd been doing it for years, even before the world started turning virtual. Small businesses, mostly, helping them clean up their security practices, fix vulnerabilities they didn't understand. Most days I kept the camera off. Just voice. That way, no one had to see the version of me I'd become. In the evenings, I'd walk to the edge of the lake. The water was mostly frozen, except for a strip along the shore that cracked and groaned when the wind pushed against it. I'd sit on a log, sometimes for an hour, sometimes until it was too dark to see my own breath, and I'd listen. To the wind, to the water, to the quiet. It's strange how quickly your life can go from full to hollow. One moment you're waking up beside someone you trust, talking about weekend plans, worrying about dinner reservations, and the next, you're staring at a bare ceiling in a trailer, trying to forget the way her voice sounded when she laughed in someone else's arms. At first, I checked my phone a few times a day. I never turned it on, just stared at the black screen, thumb hovering over the power button, wondering what waited on the other side. Messages? Apologies? More lies? Eventually, I stopped wondering. The phone stayed zipped in a backpack in the corner of the trailer, battery long dead. That silence, once terrifying, slowly became comfort. Each day without her voice felt like detox, painful but necessary. By the second week, the ache in my chest shifted. It didn't go away, not completely, but it dulled. I stopped replaying that night on loop. Stopped imagining what would have happened if I'd barged into the room and confronted them. Would she have cried? Lied again? Blamed me? It didn't matter anymore. The truth had already carved its place inside me. One night, while watching the lake crack in the moonlight, I caught myself smiling. It wasn't joy, not even close, but it was the first moment that didn't feel entirely soaked in grief. That night, I finally slept. By week 3, I started writing in a notebook. Nothing deep, just thoughts, fragments, what I'd seen in the woods, what I remembered from our first trip to the coast. Sometimes I'd write her name and stare at it until it blurred. Sometimes I'd scratch it out so hard the paper tore. One page just said, "She let go before I even realized I was holding on alone." I kept that one. Around the 4th week, I took a short drive to the nearest town, about 40 minutes of winding road through snow-lined trees. I bought groceries, a better blanket, and a small camping stove. The woman at the register asked where I was from. "Nowhere," I said. She just smiled like that made perfect sense. Back at the trailer, I started cooking simple meals. Rice, lentils. Some nights just toast and peanut butter. It wasn't about the food. It was about having something to do. A rhythm. I stopped thinking of it as hiding. It became something else. A reset. A surrender. I wasn't trying to build a new life. I was trying to remember who I was before, the version of me that bent and folded to keep a marriage alive that she had already left behind. I didn't check the news. I didn't scroll. I didn't look her up. In a world where everything is one search away, I made myself harder to find. And somehow, the loneliness that used to feel unbearable turned into space. Space to breathe, to uncoil, to feel anger without apology, and silence without fear. By the end of the month, the lake had frozen over completely. I stood on the shore, watched the moonlight stretch across the ice like a path leading nowhere. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to follow it. I just stood there, still, whole. For now, that was enough. The first message came on a Tuesday. I hadn't checked that inbox in weeks, the old work account tied to my freelance cybersecurity jobs. I'd only opened it because a client mentioned they'd sent over a contract. I clicked in expecting PDFs and invoices, but there it was. Her name, Mallory Davis. Subject line, "Please." Just read. I stared at it for a long time. Not a single keystroke. No breath. Just her name on the screen and that word, "Please," hanging in the air like a ghost of everything I didn't want to remember. I didn't open it. I should have deleted it. Should have archived the entire thread without looking back. But I didn't. I closed the browser and sat there, palms flat on the cheap vinyl table, my reflection faint in the window. Outside, the wind was scattering dry pine needles across the gravel. 10 minutes later, a second one came. Different subject. I made a mistake. The next day, there were 3 more, then 5, then 7. Each subject line like a soft knock at a door I'd locked for a reason. I didn't reply, didn't even click. But that didn't stop them from piling up. Each one time-stamped. Early morning, late at night, sometimes 2 within the same hour. The messages started changing tone, too, from apologetic to desperate. From, I need you to understand, too. I don't know how to live like this. Then came Garrett. Just one email. Nick, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this way. If there's anything I can do to make it right, let me know. No subject line. No follow-up. Just that one email, short and cold. Like he was checking off a box. I read it twice, then moved it to trash. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted to relieve his conscience. You don't get to burn down someone's life and then ask to be understood. Then, a few days later, a different name appeared in my inbox. Linda Fields, Mallory's mother. Her email was long, rambling, half apology, half plea. She's confused, Nick. You know how she gets caught in something she didn't plan. I'm not saying what she did was right, but I think she was scared. She's punishing herself enough already. Maybe it's time to talk. I almost laughed. Scared. That word stuck with me. As if fear justifies betrayal. As if being confused was a pass to destroy someone who trusted you without a second thought. After that, I archived everything. I set a filter. Any email from her, from Garrett, from anyone who mentioned her name, automatically redirected to a folder I never opened. I didn't want their guilt. I didn't need their explanations. Because the thing I'd started to realize, sitting there in that little trailer with the frost thickening on the window and the silence ringing in my ears, was that she wasn't mourning me. She was mourning control. Mallory had always needed to be at the center of things. She was magnetic in that way, confident, warm, witty. The kind of person who could light up a room or *CK the air out of it, depending on what she wanted. And for years, I'd mistaken that charisma for connection. But now, without access to my responses, my forgiveness, my presence, she was unraveling. Not because she missed me, but because she couldn't manage me anymore. And I saw it in her words. As the messages kept coming, now pushed to my hidden folder, I noticed the tone shifting again. First, she was gentle, apologetic, then wounded, then angry. One subject line read, "I can't believe you're being this cold." Another, "You were never perfect either." And then, weeks later, "Forget it. You clearly don't care anymore." But the very next day came a final one. Subject, "I lied. I didn't open it." Not because I didn't wonder what she meant, but because I knew what she wanted: to rewrite history, to take control of the narrative, to throw one last thread in my direction and see if I'd pull. But I couldn't, because the truth was I did care. Deeply. That was the part she would never fully understand. I hadn't disappeared to punish her. I disappeared because staying would have been like swallowing glass every day and pretending it tasted fine. I wasn't being cold. I was finally being honest. And it took sitting in silence with myself. No noise, no distractions, no her. To realize just how long I'd gone without feeling truly seen. So I stayed gone. Instead of scrolling through messages, I rebuilt small things. I fixed a broken hinge on the trailer door. I started sketching again. Nothing special, just charcoal outlines of the lake, the trees, the clouds that hung low in the morning. I made soup from scratch. I stacked firewood even though the heater mostly worked. Each task was a declaration. This is mine. This moment. This breath. This peace. She had taken so much already. My trust. My stability. The future I thought we were building. But what she hadn't taken, what I had learned to reclaim, was myself. One night, deep into the first week of December, I pulled out the old notebook and wrote, "Some people don't miss you. They miss controlling how close you are." I underlined it twice. A few days later, I powered on the phone I'd kept buried in my backpack. I charged it, watched the screen blink to life, and scrolled through the backlog. Messages, voicemails, missed calls, photos, the whole digital mess of someone trying to resurrect a version of you that no longer exists. Cleared it all. Wiped the device clean. Factory reset. A digital metaphor for something far more human. The next morning, I went to the lake and watched the sunrise. The ice shimmered under a pale winter light, and for once, I didn't think about her. I thought about the quiet, the air in my lungs, the cup of coffee warming my hands, the stillness I'd fought so hard to find. And I realized then, I didn't need closure from her. Because silence, real silence, is closure. It's the answer that doesn't require explanation. It's the end of the conversation that never needed to happen. And it's the beginning of something else entirely. 2 months later, I returned to grab a few things. Mallory was there, quieter, thinner. She asked if this was really the end. I looked at her, then at the photo of us on the table, and said nothing. I left the keys behind and walked out. I didn't know her anything more. Now I live in Nevada with a dog named Milo. I consult, run, sleep well. No more lies, no more waiting. She once messaged, "I understand now." I didn't reply. I've moved on.